In ancient Rome there were rituals meant to sanctify a marriage and rituals meant to bind a woman to her husband and his household. But hidden beneath the ceremonies spoken of in textbooks and carved on temple stones, there existed whispers of something darker. A ritual so old that even Romans of the imperial age called it ancestral, a custom that blended superstition, fear, and the hunger for control. It was the wedding night ritual known only through scattered writings and accusations made during scandals and trials. A ritual said to have gone far beyond anything a bride expected. They called it the unlocking of the bride, but those who lived through it called it something else entirely. They called it the night Rome took her soul. The story begins not with love, but with a belief. Romans believed that a bride carried with her not only her beauty and her dowry, but also the spirits of her father's household, spirits that could curse a marriage if not properly dismissed. To free her from them, she had to be symbolically broken away from her old life. The ceremony during the day was gentle enough. Her family pretended to resist as the groom pretended to seize her. The veil was red like blood and fire. The torches burned. The wedding feast roared. But every Roman woman knew that the true test awaited after the guests drifted home. The wine soured in forgotten cups, and the laughter faded into an uneasy silence. It was said that the wedding night ritual could last until dawn, and in some ancient households, it was not the groom who waited behind the door, but the matrons of the family. Old women wrapped in dark shawls who carried bowls of salt-dried herbs and tiny clay images shaped like demons. They said the bride had to pass through them before she reached the marriage bed. She had to prove her purity, her obedience, her worthiness to enter the bloodline. Her groom waited somewhere beyond them, but he was not allowed to speak. Tradition demanded that the bride face the women first. What those women did depended on the region, on the clan, on the rumors their ancestors had carried from forgotten villages. Some only blessed her and pressed a mark of oil on her forehead. Others were far less kind. There were records of brides being stripped of their jewelry and forced to walk barefoot across cold stone. Some had ropes tied gently around their wrists, not to restrain them, but as a reminder that a Roman wife belonged to her household. Some brides had their hair unbraided while the matrons chanted half-remembered prayers that sounded like warnings. And in the harshest traditions, the bride was tested. Her courage, her silence, her obedience, all measured in ways that blurred the line between ritual and cruelty. There were stories of brides made to kneel for hours while the matrons circled them, muttering about ancestral spirits, clinging to the girl like smoke. There were stories of brides left alone in a dark room with only a flickering lamp and a carved statue of some forgotten household god staring at them with wide accusing eyes. But the most disturbing part of the ritual came when the groom was finally allowed to enter. He was expected to perform a symbolic act called the unlocking. To the Romans, the woman was the gate through which new life entered the world, and gates had to be opened. The word itself did not describe what actually happened, but the symbolism was clear enough. He was expected to show dominance to break her connection to her old family and make her fully his. In the earliest recorded versions of this ritual, the groom did not act alone. The matrons stayed, not to watch, but to whisper instructions to him, to urge him, to command him to be brutal if necessary. Because if the bride resisted, the gods might see it as rejection, and rejection meant bad luck for the household. This was where the ritual crossed into the realm of fear. Some Roman writers described grooms left trembling afterwards. Some described brides who never spoke of that night again. One historian hints that, in certain aristocratic families, the ritual was used not to bless the marriage, but to break the bride so completely that she would never challenge the authority of her new house. It was not merely a wedding night, it was a rite of domination. There was one story whispered in the writings of a senator who lived during the reign of Tiberius. He never dared to name the family, but he wrote of a young bride from the Sabine Hills who was married into a powerful Roman clan. On her wedding night, she made the mistake of crying out loud enough for the servants to hear. The matrons called it an omen. They dragged her back to the hearth and forced her to kneel before the flames. They cut off a lock of her hair and burned it on the coals while chanting that the girl must submit or that spirits would devour her marriage. She was returned to the marriage bed only when she could no longer cry. When dawn came, she could not stand without help. The senator wrote that she smiled for the guests the next morning, but her eyes had died. There was another story of a noblewoman from Iridium whose groom believed too devoutly in the old traditions. Before entering the bedchamber, he brought 3 household gods carved of black stone. He placed them around the bed so they could witness the ritual. The bride later claimed she felt their eyes on her long after the night ended, long after the marriage ended, long after the man himself was gone. She spent the rest of her life sleeping in rooms with no statues, no idols, and no mirrors. She said mirrors held memories. Not every Roman wedding night was dark. Some were gentle. Some were filled with laughter, some grooms ignored the old rituals entirely. But enough stories circulated that even centuries later, Roman brides prayed, not for love, but for mercy. They prayed that their grooms would be kind, and that the matrons would be satisfied quickly. They prayed that the unlocking would be symbolic and not literal. They prayed that dawn would come fast. Yet what terrified them most was not the pain or the fear or the humiliation. It was the realization that the ritual had nothing to do with them. It was not about their love or their happiness. It was about Rome, about control, about binding a woman to a clan in a way she could never escape. The wedding night ritual was a reminder that a Roman wife did not belong to herself. She belonged to the lineage she married into, and Rome demanded proof. That is why the ritual survived for centuries. That is why it was whispered from mother to daughter with trembling voices. And that is why, even in its mildest form, brides approached the wedding bed not with excitement but with dread. Because in ancient Rome, the most horrifying part of a marriage was not the ceremony or the politics or the expectations. It was the night when the bride discovered what Rome truly expected of her. A night where innocence was not lost but taken. A night where love was irrelevant. A night where the gods were invoked to justify what mortals desired. This was the wedding night ritual that went too far. And though Rome tried to bury it beneath marble myths and golden words, the echoes remain. In rumors, in records, in the quiet terror of forgotten brides whose voices never reached history but whose suffering shaped it.